Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our meeting this morning. This is a special meeting. It's Thursday, April 18th, 2019. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. And first thing on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you please stand and join me. The flag is in the rear. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And our order of business today, we're pleased to have Mr. Don Haig with us. He is with McPherson and Jacobson, and he is here to discuss search and selection for our superintendent. And welcome here, and thank you very much for coming. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, first of all, let me kind of explain. I've worked for McPherson Jacobson for 20 years. I'll talk a little bit about my background so you know where I come from. I was in the school business for 42 and a half years. I started out as a teacher coach, became principal, and my last two positions were superintendent. I was superintendent in Hoxie, Kansas, which is northwest Kansas, for 12 years, and 12 years in Gering, Nebraska. Gering is Scotts Bluff. The river divides the two. We're twin sister cities. District of about the same size as Sanborn, maybe a little smaller. It was about 2,000, 2,500 kids is what we had in the school district in Gering. I started working for McPherson Jacobson almost 20 years ago and doing superintendent searches. I would take days of vacation, and a lot of people ask me, why would you want to do a superintendent search? Well, we believe, and the company believed, that every school district deserved the best possible leader we could get. And we felt we were an instrumental role in that. And so that's how it all got started. I do have three sons. We were talking about my oldest son, who's been kind of, everybody's aware of now because he's been on the news a lot. Nick is an astronaut. He is on the space station right now. He's been up for a month, and he'll be there another 6 months. He comes back October 3rd. His wife is also a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. She's the head of the ROTC program at the University of Houston and surrounding schools. And they have two grandsons that we get to come up here May 23rd. She's bringing them up, and we keep them for a month. We've done this for a number of years, and they're now 12-year-old and an 8-year-old. So we have a lot of fun with them. And of course, we get them when we come up here. We decided to retire to this area. We live out at the Idaho Club, my wife and I, and that's why I ran into Geraldine. We had a sneak preview of the clubhouse, so there is a clubhouse being built out there that's pretty nice, and I think everybody in the whole area is going to appreciate that. The other two boys, I have a son that's a graduate of KU Law School. He's an attorney down in Scottsdale, Arizona. His wife's an anesthesiologist. They have one grandson down there, and he's about 18 months. We can't wait till we get to take care of him for a while too, so he'll be coming up sometime. And then the youngest son, who's probably the most instrumental in us being here in Sandpoint, because he married a girl from Spokane. He grew up in Spokane, worked for DCI. He was out DCI engineering, he's a structural engineer, graduated from UW at Seattle with his master's degree, and he works for DCI now down in San Francisco and lives in Oakland. They have no kids. Right now they're in Morocco on a vacation and coming back. So travel the world and that type of thing. Now the important thing for you, I retired from doing this, and when I saw Sean had resigned, I said, hey Sean, I sent an email and I talked to Lisa, and it's really a tough time frame for you to be in to look for a superintendent. Typically, superintendents are January, February, that's kind of the time frame you're in. But it doesn't mean you can't have a good search this time of year, because we've done them that way. I've been involved in about 50 searches altogether. Last year, before I retired, I did Chewelah and Okanagan out here, and I trained a guy in Washington to be able to do those searches, so I was working with him. Bill Dean and Barbara Dean are the two consultants that are really going to do your search. Bill and Barbara Dean. They did the search in Coeur d'Alene. And so, but I wanted to make, Bill called me and he says, Don, I'm not gonna be able to fly up to Sandpoint to do a presentation. Can you pitch it and go in and do the presentation for us? And I said, absolutely, I'll be glad to do that. I'm close, I'm 8 miles away, it doesn't take me long to get in here. I had some errands to run in town anyway. So that's a little bit about me, and that's not the important thing, but Bill and Barbara Dean live in Post Falls, Idaho. They'll be there the 23rd of May. So that's important to you because that helps cut down your expenses. They don't have to fly from a long ways away. They're driving up here and be able to do things locally. And they stay until the end of September. And so I think going through this process, and I'll walk through. Now, this is very interactive. Anytime, I know you haven't been through a search. Nobody on the board currently has had a search process, and you have a former board member out here that went through a couple searches. So she can kind of compare what we do, and Lisa's been through a couple of these searches. So I'll walk you through this. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to, hey, ask.
Okay.
Gary, you have one on the tip of your tongue.
No, my mind's working, but I'm going to wait. You know?
Yeah, good. Let's hear what he's got.
Okay.
Let's get that on the record.
The introduction letter, there are 100 folks like me, or used to be like me, across the country, and we were in 36 states the last I knew, as consultants. Most of our consultants are retired administrators, retired school board members, retired business executives. There's a few of those, but all of them have experience, a vast amount of experience. The nice thing about that is that we have a good network. When we get a candidate that comes from Arizona, we have folks in Arizona that will know that candidate. And so it's a lot easier to be able to recruit, find them, because you're dealing with a national firm. Now, I'm not saying local firms aren't great. There are some folks that retired superintendents will form their own organization. They'll go out and try to hire, but they don't reach out quite as wide an area as we do. So that's one advantage of having a national search firm. That's kind of what Tom explains in the letter to you. Tom Jacobson is the president of the company, and he and I probably are the same age. So Tom continues to do this. He's also a professor at Kearney in Nebraska. Let's go to page 3. It says it's all about kids, and I hit on this. The big thing for McPherson-Jacobson that sets us apart from a lot of firms, we try to be as transparent as possible. Now, I don't know whether you did it in the last searches, whether you did interviews in a public meeting or open meeting, or it was a closed meeting. In some states, you cannot interview candidates in an executive session. You have to do them in an open meeting. Now, I don't know the Idaho laws and whether you have to do executive session interviews or not. Barbara and Bill Dean will know.
Yep.
They'll be able to walk you through that. They've done it through Coeur d'Alene, and so they're experienced with that. But we try to be as transparent, so we have a lot of community involvement in this process. They don't decide who the superintendent is. That's your role. You have to hire the superintendent, but you can get input from a lot of folks. That's the important thing. Page 5, leading national search firm. The firm has placed over 725 superintendents to date, so they've got a lot of experience. Started in 1991 is when the firm actually started. Nationwide, I talked about the 100. About 50% of our superintendent or consultants do have a doctorate degree. The biggest thing, I think, is the last statement on page 5, the sustainability and leadership. We truly believe, and I think it's important, if you want to improve your school, student achievement in your school, you need to have stable leadership at the top. And it can't be changing superintendents every 2 or 3 years. For that fact, our track record, 75% of our placements are still there after 5 years. Over 50% of the administrators are still in their position in 10, and almost half of the administrators selected by governing boards will stay in 15. It's a little less than 50. But we try to do a great match. And when I walk you through the process, you're going to see how we do this, because we just don't only help you hire one, we try to work with you in that first year to make sure the marriage works out well. And that's important. Okay. Page. The executive summary. The board, what we try to do is we always say we'll do the heavy lifting in the search process. The company will, the consultants will. What we want you to focus on is interviewing and selecting the candidate. We try to let your role be just that. You get the interview and select them, and we try to do, get the applicants, screen applicants, and everything through the whole process. And so the board is focused on interviewing and selection. Transparency, again, is the hallmark. The entire board, the very first phase, I'll talk about this 2 or 3 times, but the first thing we'll do, the consultants will meet with you and go through a consensus building on what you're looking for in the next superintendent from the board. Now, Bill and Barbara Dean won't be here until the 23rd of May, but we've already talked about this, and I would strongly encourage you, they'll set up a Skype with you and do that with the board and carry through this phase 1 as soon as you get it set up. I mean, once you sign a contract, they're going to line up a date because you don't want to waste any time at this point in time in the process.
Yeah.
I think that's critical.
Yeah.
Okay. But the nice thing that you have, and I mentioned this to Lisa, your school year lasts into June. So you have some time, because one of the focus groups we have is students. We have students, teachers, classified, and I'll talk about that, but it's kind of important to have them in the school setting. And if you do this in the summer, you lose those. And so it's kind of critical to get this whole thing going, and that's why I'm saying those meetings could occur before you get out of school. And I'll walk you through that here. We actively recruit candidates. The company doesn't have a stable of candidates that we just throw at everybody. We look at what you're looking for, and then they try to match. Okay, who's a good one out there? Now I'm going to say it probably 10 times, but I'll say it once. If you don't find the person, you go through this whole process, and let's say it's typically 8 to 12 weeks, and you get to June 15th, and hey, we don't have the person we really feel comfortable with. You'd share that with the consultants, and they'd say, okay, let's do some interim process. We'll get an interim in here. We'll go through it for a year, and then we'll come in and do the search in a more timely fashion starting in January or December or something like that. So if you sign a contract with McPherson Jacobson, we're with you until you get the candidate you want. So that's important to realize. And then at the end, I'll talk about if for whatever reason, if you go through phase 5, down here, if the superintendent leaves for whatever reason, in the first 2 years, your guaranteed period, then they do the search again with expenses only. You don't pay another contract or anything like that. So we're confident enough in the process that we're going to get you one in here that you're going to be comfortable with, is going to do a good job, and it's going to stay on the job. That makes sense? Yeah.
I had a question. Would you assist also if we had to go to the interim
Yes.
superintendent?
Yes, they will.
To help us in the same way you would?
Yep. And there's no extra charge for that. That's part of the contract. If you need to have an interim and that's where you feel you want to go, that's something I would share with Bill and Barbara right away. Just say, hey, we think we're going to have to do an interim because we don't know if we're going to have time. I wouldn't discourage you from doing a search now. You may end up finding somebody that's just whiz-bang. I mean, this guy or gal could be just terrific, but you may not too. I think you just got to be realistic about it. And don't hire somebody just to have a warm body. That's the thing. That's the key, Carrie. Yeah. So I think that's really important.
I agree.
Okay. That last bullet point is what I was talking about, is the guarantee. On page 9, it explains the 5 phases. And I'll go through this, and then I won't try to read through all the others. Phase 1, the first thing they're going to do, phase 1 is a meeting with you, and they want to establish characteristics of the new superintendent. You'll go around the table and you'll spend 30 minutes talking about, or longer, about what you're looking for in the next superintendent. And that's from you as a board. Then we'll establish a timeline. They will establish, like I said, typically 8 to 12 weeks is the timeline that you're going to run into. That'll work through the whole process. And then you determine your advertised venues. You sign this contract, the listing will go on our website almost the next day.
Yeah.
So it goes up right away. Now, the official advertisement, after you've met with Bill and Barbara, they're going to set up, what do you want to advertise at? AASA is typically the one that a lot of people look at, that type of thing. He'll talk about Ed Week. There's a number of different advertising venues. The thing I'd caution you about, some of them can be very costly. And anymore, social media is the way people look at jobs. It just is. So you don't have to spend a ton of money on advertising.
Yeah.
I will tell you that up front, because if I was doing the search, I would discourage you from doing a whole lot other than AASA. Every superintendent that's looking for another position is looking at AASA almost every day. Phase 2, stakeholder meetings. We do stakeholder inputs, and what that is, with the board, you identify groups that you want to have meet, and these people are going to be instrumental, because what's going to happen is the consultants will come up, and typically it's going to be your central office, it's going to be building administrators, it'll be classified staff, it'll be certified staff, and it'll be students and community. There are 6 groups that you kind of meet with. Those consultants will come in and meet with each group, and these are open meetings. You invite every certified staff member to a meeting, and we try to do certified and classified outside of the school day so you're not interrupting school. And they come in and you set up a meeting in the community. I've done as many as 2-3 meetings with the community depending on the size, and with the spread we have here in Sandpoint, you're covering a big area. So having a meeting only in Sandpoint may not be the best answer. You may want to hold one out in Clark Fort and one in Sandpoint, to give people the opportunity to go to either meeting, that type of thing. Because you cover a geographical area. Yeah.
Do we
Geraldine.
need to go through you for questions to?
No, no, go ahead. Just
We'll do it informally.
Yeah, done.
I have a question. You mentioned that they're not local, and they're not back to Post Falls until May 21st.
Third.
23rd. Will they do any back and forthing in that time? 'Cause
Absolutely.
for
Well,
these kind of stakeholder meetings, we wouldn't want to wait until they're.
no.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
could very well set up the stakeholder meetings and fly up and do those.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, I just was like, that's.
And
a
even if
long
they set
way
them
to
up
get-
for, that week, they're going to want to get started right away.
Okay, that's comforting.
It sounds like, they're snowbirds? Are they live
Yeah,
in
they
Post
are
Falls?
snowbirds.
Okay. I
They're
got
in
you.
Tucson.
They're in Arizona now?
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
Bill's a retired superintendent. She was with AASA, I believe.
Okay.
And they're a husband-wife team. They've done excellent work. They're
But
very good.
They're not so busy that we have to stall until they're back.
No.
Okay.
No, we'd make sure. There's other people that could come in and help with those. Like I said, if you can't get that worked out. The person I trained, Mike Parker, lives at Desert Canyon Golf Course. I can't even think of the little town out on the western side of Washington.
Yeah.
You know where I'm talking
I
about.
do.
But that's, Mike has done, and that's the one I trained. And he helped me with Chewelah and also Okanagan. So there's people that could get here and do those.
Okay.
That's not a problem.
Yeah.
We'll just tell the deans it's warm and they can come up. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
They
yeah.
can get up here.
The weather's beautiful.
And the weather's turning better, and it's
Yeah, that's
getting hot down in
Yeah.
Arizona. My son in Scottsdale told me that.
Yeah.
It's 96 degrees the other day, so.
Oh, they need to get back
probably
up
want to
there.
get out there.
Take our weather.
But the stakeholder meetings, what they do, this is skipping it, but I'll explain it. What they do in these stakeholder meetings, they ask questions they ask the same question. What's good about your school district and community? What are the characteristics you're looking for in the next superintendent? And then what challenges does this superintendent face? And you've got some challenges here. I've been here long enough to see that there's some challenges you have to deal with. So they go around and get that from every group, students, classified, certified. They develop a report, and they give that report to you. And I strongly encourage you to put that on the website of your district, and because then you'll get an idea of what the community thinks and the people in the community about what they're looking for in a superintendent. You know, here's the challenges we're facing. Here's the good things we think about Sandpoint and Hope, Clarkport, and all this area. And so everybody sees that. And also helps candidates that are looking, they go in and look at that and say, hey, is this a good fit for me? You know, that type of thing. So it's good PR. It really is, and it's great for the school district to go through. They develop the application specific for this position. They'll develop the application and they recruit and track applicants. That's phase 2. Then phase 3, they evaluate and reference check applicants. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Develop interview questions. They help you develop interview questions. They just don't tell the board, okay, you've got here's the questions. We make them specific for your position and they'll help you develop that.
Do they have a dog?
They select the applicants to be interviewed. We never blackball candidates. Every candidate that applies will get shared with you. Anybody that fills out an application. But when they come in, they will pick the ones that they feel, we call it a short list of candidates, that best fit the position. Now the neat thing that they're doing now, and we did this last year, is we do about a 3-minute video of the candidates that we feel are a good match for the district. So you may have 6 that we think are really good candidates. They'll share that video with you and you'll have a chance to see that candidate in person before you ever bring them in for an interview. So it kind of helps narrow down, okay, we think that really looks good. Now, again, these are staged and they ask the same questions of every candidate, so it isn't cold turkey that you're getting them like they're standing up here and having to answer questions. But at least you get an idea of how they present themselves, things like that. The candidates, when they interview the candidates on phase, we select candidates, interview candidates. You go through in phase 4 on the interview process. We strongly encourage to interview 1 candidate a day because they're going to come in and visit the district.
Yeah.
They're going to meet with each one of these focus group representatives. I'll give you an example. Let's say we have 50 teachers show up on the certified. They'll all sign in at the meeting and then they'll say, I'd be willing to serve on the interview committee for the candidate. And we have them star by their name and we share that with the board because you control who you want to have set on that group. And I tell them up front and they'll tell them the same thing. We don't say the teachers can pick who they want to have interview. We leave that up to the board and the board picks students so that you get representation of the district. You don't want them all coming out of the high school, for example, or all out of the grade school, that type of thing. So the board kind of controls that process. But when the candidate comes in, they have a full day of interviews. If they meet with 6 focus groups, and I just mentioned 6, you got 45 minutes, that's a 6-hour process right there.
Yeah.
Then they're going to meet with you informally. Usually we try to have a dinner with you and then a formal interview, and plus visiting the district. You can see it's a full day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
They need to tour our.
yeah, and what we do, Gary, is we say if you can't handle that interview, you probably can't handle this job because it's a demanding job. From experience, I can tell you, you know, it is a 24/7 job when you're superintendent. You just, especially now that you have a cell phone, you know, you're never away from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's demanding, but that's why it goes through a long process. Selection of the new superintendent occurs in phase 4. They'll pick the one, and then phase 5 is what I talked about. We'll come in when the new superintendent is hired. They usually start July 1 if it's the right time frame and everything. That person comes in July. We let them get their feet on the ground the month of July. Then in August, they usually set up a meeting with the board, the consultant, and the new superintendent. And you develop objectives for the first year that you really want the superintendent to focus on, and they have been in the district at least a month, and then they sat down and participate in the process as well. So, and then we strongly encourage you to use that for your evaluation of the superintendent in the first year. These are the things we wanted to see them do. Did they get them done? Not only do we say, this is what we want them to do, then you agree upon what do you accept as evidence they're making progress on that goal.
Yeah.
So you lay it all out for them. And that's why we say we're a marriage counselor that first year. Then the consultants usually contact the superintendent every quarter, how's things going? Because if we hit a bump in the road, we want to take care of it before the superintendent throws up his hands or the board throws up their hands, this isn't working out. We want to get that bump taken care of. So that's how it all works out. So that's the 5 phases. Now, the next pages will go into a lot more detail on the phases, and I've already said a lot of this stuff, so I'll kind of highlight.
Dawn, is there an easy way to summarize, that 8 to 12 week process? Those first 3 phases are all
Pretty quick.
background.
Yeah.
So how quick does that first 3 phases happen? In general, I know we're very late in the game, so I'm really talking timing.
Getting out to advertise and everything, at least 4 weeks, sometimes maybe 5. I'm in that ballpark. Now, Bill and Barbara.
Of the first 3 phases,
Right,
you're looking
you're
at
gonna get
about
pretty quick.
a month.
Yeah, month, a little bit
4 to 6.
more than a month, because we got to advertise.
Yeah,
When you advertise for meetings, you want to have these public meetings, but you don't want to set out a public meeting and give them 1 day notice. You
No,
kind of
no,
need
no.
to have
Yeah.
a week out in the paper and things like that. You just have to advertise those things.
I mean, do you also, recruit? I mean, obviously you.
Yes,
I mean, so
absolutely.
You've got, a long phone list of people maybe you thought were really good candidates, but weren't selected for other jobs.
Right.
And could be a good match.
Yet some of your best candidates, and that's why I said up front, is they're sitting there looking at this job saying, if it would only have happened in January, if this would only have happened in December, I would be really interested, because they're under contract. Some of them are under contract and they can't get out of their contracts.
Yeah.
So it's a problem. So I think we have to be, that's why I said Gary up front. But that doesn't mean there aren't some out there that may be setting as an assistant superintendent that's dynamite and ready for this job.
yeah.
So do you,
that could
as
be.
part of your, do you also, verify their credentials?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we do. I'll let you, I pretty much went over everything that you have on, the one thing I didn't mention is point of contact. Typically, we would set up either Kelly or Lisa, who's been through this before, but the board could choose who, we don't want a board member being the point of contact with the company.
No.
The point of contact with us would be one of these 2 people. Typically, we do it with the board secretary. But Lisa has been through this, but her plate is pretty full from just what I read in the paper. So I don't know that you want to throw that on her, but it's working. Kelly would be the one, typically I've worked with board secretaries 99% of the time. And they're the communication, Bill would be setting up meetings and doing
Yeah.
all those types of things.
The logistics,
I
making
think that
appointments and.
clerk of our board is the natural choice.
I think the clerk,
Yeah, it's throwing too much on business manager, I think,
Is
even though
it-
she's been through it.
Is it such an overload? She's already a very fully worked clerk.
Yeah.
Is it such an overload that we need to look at somebody helping over the next 2 months?
No, I don't think so, Geraldine, I really don't think. Most of them have really been pretty good and they handle it. The home office, there's 3 gals in the home office that work closely with them and do a lot for them.
And
So it's just kind of a conduit more than anything, getting things here and getting things timely, developing a brochure, for the district, you're going to do that, and different things that have to occur.
Have you and Lisa talked about that point of contact person? Is it?
No.
You have not?
So-
Perfect.
would
Didn't know.
would this be in your normal job description,
Yes.
duties that you have?
Yes.
Because otherwise, maybe it might involve extra.
Do you have an
compensation.
information person in the district, PR?
No.
Anybody? Nope, you're
Like a
in?
communication director or?
Yeah.
No.
Well, sometimes, the reason I say that, sometimes they help a lot with the brochure.
I know.
They'll, that type of stuff.
I read this, I read your whole packet, and that's why I'm like, I want to make sure you feel supported to do the job we're asking of you, at whatever stage you need help.
I think I am very capable to handle the logistics, and you guys are all wonderful communicators, so,
Yeah.
Well, we can work that out.
We'll figure that out.
Yes,
So let's
exactly.
But
I think it
officially
can be
make her
done.
the,
you know, what it sounds like to me is if we go forward, as you suggest here, we need to have a two-prong. We need to look for a superintendent, and we also need to keep in the back of our mind, we may look for an interim.
Yeah.
Both
So
of them,
that's-
depending, but we just don't know what's gonna happen.
You know, the interim, you might, I don't know your staff and everything, but if you have somebody on staff that might be able to do that for a year, that might be a possibility. They know the district and could keep things going, and I think you probably, normally in a district this size, you're gonna have some people that have that certification.
yeah.
I would just say that. I don't know for a fact,
We do.
but that to be a possibility. And then I'm not saying there is an interim out there that says, hey, I'd do that for a year. That would be great. Typically, they'll bring in, if we have the time, a couple interims for you to interview and say, okay, who do I want to have run our district for a year? That type of thing. So, yeah, you've got two prongs. You're going to have an interim in the back of your mind, and then we're
If
going
we
through
don't
the search
find-
process.
So that, like, you know, we're familiar with what happened in Coeur d'Alene.
Right.
We're all.
You're close there.
We're close to them, and we know their board and what they went through. You know, and they went the interim route, and they picked an interim who actually I think was referred by the ISBA, who was a retired superintendent from Southern Idaho, who was not a candidate for the permanent job. And-
Right.
And,
That-
and I think he was actually, you know, asked to help participate in the selection of his successor, because he was not a candidate, you know.
Right. And that happens. Typically, you don't want the interim to be a candidate.
Right, otherwise you're in the situation
Yeah, you kind of put him
where
in a bad
he's
spot.
there and you don't want it, you know, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't think
Yeah.
that's good. Okay.
So, I mean, I'm very impressed with your program and your credentials and your presentation. I mean, my big question is, do we have enough time? You know,
Yeah.
can we
That's
get
the big
a
one.
qualified candidate? I mean, it sounds like we need to get applications in within the next 6 weeks, you know,
Yeah.
in order to complete the process.
You do have, I don't want to discourage you on not doing it right now. And that's what I would tell Bill. You just get started right away and do it. Because the first three phases, like Geraldine, once you've gone through those, you've gone through it. Even if we
Yeah.
delay it, you've already done
Done that groundwork.
So that work is already done.
So, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
just like you pointed out, which I've heard from other sources, is that current superintendents in other districts are obligated. They have contracts that
Right.
that are probably extending into next school year.
Right.
So, I mean, are we limiting, limiting our applicant pool to?
Absolutely, the time is limiting your
Yeah.
candidates. I would say that you're not going to limit. But again, like I said, going through the first three phases, you're done with that. You've had your community meetings, you've had the input, you've done your brochures, all that stuff would be done. It's just reactivating and extending the application process.
Yeah.
So,
If we
once you
have
got
to
through
pick
it,
back up,
and
right.
you didn't have what you wanted, then you just extend the application process and go through it. Even if you went through the interviews, Gary, you could go interview 3 candidates and say, I don't think we're comfortable with any one of these 3 people. So you just say, okay,
Open the-
we didn't hire anybody, we'll open it back up, and we're gonna extend it out.
Yeah.
The company, like I said, we're gonna be with you until you get one.
Okay, that's.
I mean, we feel like, you know,
Yeah.
we're, you know, our school district's on the right path. We feel like we have a desirable community. You know, I think we pay a very competitive wage, you know, so, you know, we think that we should have some very qualified candidates. And I don't want to discount, you know, current superintendents because, from that process, because of the timeline.
That's exactly right. So that's what you're doing.
So if we go through this, if we were to move forward with your firm,
Right.
go through this process, we figure out in 6 weeks, you know what, there's just nobody there that is gonna cut the mustard right now. So let's go the interim route. Come December, when we need to
Right.
start this process again with you guys, is there another contract amount that we have to
No.
do, or it's all rolled into that one?
It's in this
Expenses.
amount right here.
Okay.
At that point, it's
Yep, it's
whatever
all right
new
there.
expenses you incur.
Yeah, it's just, it'd be a few additional expenses because you're gonna have maybe an additional trip or something, but that would be it, Lonnie. And again, you're dealing with 50 miles
Right.
is not a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not a really big deal. Yeah, Geraldine?
I have one more question that is on my mind. I think it's in phase 1 here, determining parameters. Is that a meeting that we have with
Compensation
Bill Dean where
parameters.
we talk about salary and compensation parameters?
You
Because that's
really kind
early part.
Okay, let me give you my standard speech when I'm doing this.
Yeah.
You're not gonna save money on the next superintendent. I'm gonna tell you that up front. They all know what they're making. And the next one will come in and expect to make about what this one is making, even though this might be his first or second or third year, may not have quite as much experience. It's what the market bears. And Barbara and Bill will come in and share with you, here's what the superintendents are being paid. It's all public information.
Yeah.
And so they all kind of know where they fall. It's important when candidates call, what are they paying currently? They want to know that. What's the board thinking? And I always tell the board, you do not want to lose a great candidate over a few $1,000s. Pay them when they're hiring them. Because it's easier for you to face the public and say, this is what we had to pay the person to get them here. The biggest mistake I've ever seen boards make is they hire them low and then give them a nice raise the first year when they do a good job. And the public says, why in the world are you paying this guy? You're already paying him a big salary. Now you're giving him a huge increase in salary, and you have to deal with that.
Yeah, you're
It's
right.
tough. It's tough for you, and it's tough on the candidate. So it's better to upfront, this is what it's going to take, and kind of where we're at.
Well, we pay our
I just-
superintendent well.
You do.
The entire board supports that. and-
Wanted to
and-
know when that
and
conversation-
And I see no reason why we wouldn't pay the next one just as well. But we do get, I mean, the new superintendent's gonna take some heat for that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the toughest thing, I'll be honest with you, Idaho is forcing these school districts to do is dead wrong. I'd say that, but this idea of having to go to the public for a 30-year budget every 2 years is stupid. I mean, it's just not, it's not educationally sound. I mean, think what it would have been like had you not passed that darn thing. I mean, it would have been.
Yeah.
Well, we thought about it.
for everybody.
We've thought about that a lot.
Well, I just wondered how early in our conversations that has to happen, and it sounds like it's gonna have to happen
Right
in
away.
a Skype conversation.
Sure.
Because that's a very
Absolutely.
front-end
Well, we
conversation to
advertise, I
have.
mean, that's what people are gonna want to know.
Yeah,
So that needs to
your
come in.
Skype, when you set up the Skype with the two, they'll go through all those things in phase 1.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
they'll do all that,
Okay.
and they'll cover that in phase 1.
Okay.
I think I pretty well covered phase 2. I try to usually do this, but it spells it out if you want to read it. This is yours to keep and hold the consultants to it.
Yeah.
If they don't do what it says, point it out to them. I've had board members have to remind me, oh, you didn't get this one done. Okay, I'll take care of that. So that's fine, because they know that this protocol has been developed since 1991 and it works well. And so I'd encourage you to do that. The video conference thing is new, and it's really, when we do reference checks, I'll talk a little bit about reference checks, and we go what we call 3D. When we do reference checks on a candidate, if Lonnie and Gary applied, and I'm going to find out who Lonnie has is listed as a reference. I'll call that reference because everybody lists those references are good. I mean, you wouldn't put a reference on your application, it wouldn't be a good one. But the last question I asked that candidate, or that person I'm talking to about the candidate, would you give me the name of a person that knows about their abilities as a superintendent that is not listed as a reference? And they'll give me a name. That's one. We'll ask that same question again for that next person I talk to. I'll do the same thing so it goes 3D. And it gets away from any listed references. Now here's the tough part. We truly believe in keeping applicants confidential as much as we can. But when we're doing reference checks, obviously you get them into that's going to get out that they're applying. So we always tell candidates, this is how we do this whole process, so be aware. You know,
Somebody
it'd
may
be
find
good to let your employer know that you have applied. Because there's somebody going to be talking to them and things like that.
Yeah.
We don't put them in the paper, all the candidates that apply. We don't list that, we'll keep that confidential, but once they're a finalist, if they're a finalist for the position, then it's public information.
Yeah.
And that's when it becomes tough for candidates.
Yeah.
Because you have 3 or 4 that you may interview, you're gonna hire one, the others have damage to do at home.
Yeah.
Because their board will ask first thing, why are you looking for another job? We thought you had a good job here. You know, it's one of those things you just have to deal with. And again, if you're a superintendent, you get developed with thick skin, you have to deal with those type of things. That's one of the things that you gotta look at. So that's the reference process. It's worked out very well, and we feel good about that. Of course, when those names come out of the finalists, everybody will Google them in town. So they do all the social media thing, and they'll Google and see if what's on with that candidate. Phase 4, we talked about. We do help you set up the interview process, set up the interview schedule, call the candidates. If we're coming in and presenting 6 finalists, if you choose 3 to interview, the consultants will get on the phone that night, set up the interviews for you, take care of all that. Again, we do all the dirty work. All you have to do is focus on the interview and selecting the right person. So they'll come in and take care of that. We strongly encourage the significant other to be involved in the process, because typically what we find out, a lot of times the superintendent will be sold on the job. And really, if he or she really thinks this is a great position, then they bring their spouse to the community, and the spouse says, there's no way in the world I'm moving here. Well, you've already got a problem. So we try to encourage the spouse to get involved in the process early so they know what they're getting into, and that's important. I don't know what your rules are as far as the district policies, but sometimes you're going to find candidates that their spouse is an educator. The nice thing about it, you do have a lot of districts in the area. If they can't work in this district, there would be opportunities in other districts as well. And unfortunately, Idaho hasn't been paying as much as they should pay for educators, so there's people looking for people all the time. I mean, I'm sure the list of candidates for positions teaching is not what it used to be, because of the availability of Washington.
Well, here the spouse can work in Washington,
Yeah.
teach there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm hearing. Right now, that seems to be an advantage. They do conduct background checks, and I talked about phase 5. And again, it talks about the guarantee. The timeline is on page 19, and it just shows the timeline, how it all works through. And again, I'd say, 2 to 3 months is the minimum, typical minimum, and that's 8 to 12 weeks. That's what I told you. That's kind of what you're going to run. It can be done in 8 weeks, which would actually get you almost to the end of school. But you can go through the process and see what's out there. That type of thing. Again, you just have to, it'll be your call. But it isn't going to cost you anything to go through it. The rest of it is kind of spells out what the task of McPherson Jacobson is, what the school district task is. We don't try to throw a heavy workload on. If you look, Kelly, on page 23, that kind of is really a summary of the things that you would be involved in.
That's the list I was reading.
Right, that's the things. And you got to remember, that's a 12-week period, or actually longer. Phase 5 is more than that. So it really isn't as much. We try to do a majority of it ourselves. Okay, the investment. On page 25 is the investments that you're going to make in the process. And what they've quoted you is $9,250 for the whole thing, and they've guaranteed a minimum not to exceed $13,000 total in the process. The only thing that would not be included in that, and you got to remember this, is candidates being brought in to interview. Typically, you're going to pay candidate expense to bring in for an interview.
For the final 3.
Yeah, the
Right.
final 3. And it spells that out. It talks about what is taken care of. And it video up to 5 candidates, so that's not a big deal. And McPherson Jacobson does some other services. If you really like some of the things that Barbara and Bill do with you, don't hesitate to say, hey, we'd like to have you do this, because they do some of that. But I'm sure the Idaho school boards association provides some of that training as well. The stakeholder involvement on 27 is kind of what I talked about with the groups, meeting the candidates. What happens at the certified teachers, I'll use them as an example, they'll have their open meetings. So let's say you've selected 6 teachers to interview the candidate when they come in. We have them set up in a room in which all the teachers could attend and listen, but they can't participate in the process. It's just the 6 that interviewed the candidate. So you would have them set up at the front of the room, ask questions, and they could have an audience of 100 if you wanted to. And the same is true with the community. The only one that's done an executive session is yours if you can do it, because you're going to get pretty specific, and I think you can. I don't think Idaho has that. Lisa may know.
We can.
Personnel.
Yeah,
Personnel.
most of the time our personnel interviews are open, but we can go to executive session before a decision is made and then
Right.
come out and announce the decision.
Right. But you could do, that's something you want to look at. But all the others, we advertise in the paper. This is when the meeting, this is the interview, this is when it's going to be set up. So nobody in the community, you can look them in the eye and say, hey, you had a chance to be involved in this whole process.
Yeah, we do it.
Right.
It's all open.
Yeah, so
That's a good point.
that's important to do that. Stakeholder involvement, that's the whole process. The interim placement is on 29. Lonnie and Gary, that's what it says right there, but they'll work with you
Yeah.
on that. And, so that's there.
Yeah, I'm missing.
The transparency on 31, and then from 31 through 40-some is really the testimonies from districts that we've
Yeah.
worked with, and you've seen some of the information. And again, you can read that at your leisure, but
Yeah.
McPherson Jacobson's a great company. I enjoyed working with it for 20 years. The process is excellent. I really felt like once we worked through the process, as long as we stuck with our protocol and didn't vary too much on that protocol, it worked really well. One of the big things, and that's not going to be a problem, Sean and I have visited before, you want to keep the current superintendent out of it. You know, you kind of just, they are
Yeah.
now in another position, and so they have to kind of walk.
He's got enough going on anyway.
Yeah, not bad. But that's kind of it, and I'll answer questions. The back part of it, it gives you the districts that we've done, and again, Coeur d'Alene and Bill and Barbara Dean are listed as Idaho consultants.
Yeah.
By me, it says an emeritus, and so it means I don't do it anymore. That's what I mean.
How would we, could you say a little bit about how we could work the Skype up and actually, it'd be nice to see them or meet them.
You can set up.
In some manner before we.
I would have Kelly, I will contact, if you sign that contract, I'm going to call Bill today, tell him Kelly will be his contact, and she will be in contact with him, and she'll set up a Skype as soon as they can get it set up. And it's just having a meeting with him and her in a Skype setting. So that could happen real quick, I think.
Okay, well, that would be nice if they're going to be the
Right.
ones we're dealing with.
Right.
It'd be nice to meet them before we.
Right. And I think you just don't want to meet them. I do phase 1. Get it done, get it going.
Yeah, oh, you bet, yeah. Well,
So point of order question for Kelly and Carrie. This is a position that we do not need to put out for bid on the contract, the recruitment company.
We can confirm with Lisa Halls, but I believe it's just professional services.
It's
Professional service.
professional services, so we are able to make the decision
Correct,
today.
exempt from the bidding process. You can execute a contract at any point in time.
Okay. And is it, we have a special motion to accept this contract, or,
You don't even have to do that. It's a professional service.
okay.
No motion
That was
needed.
No action.
No.
point of order on what action needed, so, okay, good.
Well, we can do nothing then. I think we're good at that. We can-
That wasn't what I was thinking.
We're good at that, so let's do it.
If we're gonna
No,
make,
if we can commit ourselves.
Got that down.
You don't need anything formally from the
that's
board.
what I
That
was
it.
asking. for the
This is a
process.
professional services contract.
Yeah, okay.
That's all.
Can I just also
Yes.
add that I spoke to Matt Brass, our information technology director yesterday, said, you know, if the board wanted to enter into a Skype meeting very soon, would the Ponderay Event Center be appropriate? Because the Wi-Fi there, as you know, is not as strong as it is, say, here in the central office. And what you would do is, on a laptop, you project what's on the laptop up onto a screen,
Right.
so it's a little
Share.
bigger.
Yeah.
But there, of course, because it will be a delay, and we recommend, you know, using probably a space within the school district where we know we have very solid Wi-Fi.
Well, how
So we
about-
could do that here, right? And it would be a special meeting
At the high school, they have a room that's
or the high school.
set up for this. you know.
It would be a special meeting.
It'd be a special meeting.
Yeah.
And it
At the high
wouldn't be
school,
hard to
they
get.
have a room
on.
that's set up.
Right,
They
math
have online
classes.
curriculum,
Or
online
anything.
classes.
I saw him lingering in the back.
Right.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I don't see
So-
a reason why you couldn't.
Well, we can work that out.
Very possible.
Do we want to have a conversation amongst the five of us on our confidence in the company so that we can go ahead and make
Yeah,
a decision right
I mean,
here?
right now, like,
Yes.
You want to go into
I
executive
mean,
session?
I-
The-
there's, yeah, I mean, I have some things that I certainly want to talk about, and I think that there's some,
Yeah, and if you
I
have
don't-
concerns that Dawn can answer,
they're not concerns
Okay.
for Dawn or
Okay.
the company.
Okay.
I wouldn't call them concerns, I just
Yeah.
So-
want some clarification.
What would we go under executive session under, if we want to do that right now?
Personnel matter.
Anything to discuss with the superintendent has to be discussed in open session.
that's what I thought.
Right. So,
I don't mind having these discussions in open session, doesn't bother
Okay.
me one bit.
Okay,
I-
yeah, that's my point. We
Mhm.
need to have it right here if we're having conversation.
yeah, this is in an open meeting, we just, yeah, just, I think the best thing to do is, any concerns that you would bring up, you can just bring them up. too.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, the thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around is, and I don't know if anybody has had these discussions, like, we do have some qualified people on staff already. Is it, would it be prudent to pump the brakes on doing a full-on search if the folks that we have in district have been contacted or have contacted, you know, Sean or somebody to say, hey, I'm willing to do this if need be or not? And I don't know the answer to that question. And if that is a route that we want to consider going, should we then plan on doing that and then, you know, tabling this matter until, you know, a few months down the road when we can do it, you know, say in December or something like that. I don't. The answers that I got from Dawn being that it doesn't matter if we start the process now or start it in December, the cost is going to be the same. The other question I would have is, McPherson Jacobson is not the only company that does these things. There is an ISBA function that handles these things, and I'm not discounting either. I'm just saying I don't want to make a hasty decision to do anything with the board moving forward in this process if we haven't considered all the alternatives and costs associated with such. That's my only, like I said, it's not necessarily a concern.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we are making the best decision
Right.
possible.
Well, a couple points. Yeah, there are other agencies that do this. We've contacted one before.
Okay.
Which was actually our first choice.
Okay.
Because we'd used them in the past.
Okay.
And we had more contacts with them. But they were so loaded, they couldn't take up anything more.
Gotcha.
ISBA has a function that they do this too. I've talked with them. Their fees are lower. I would say you just have to weigh the pros and cons.
Right.
One thing is, they're local right here. ISBA is in Boise.
Yeah.
Now, so we're talking about commuting back and forth. What that would be, we have a company here that network, I think, is a little bit wider. Not that ISBA,
National
not that they don't, you know, go outside of Idaho, but I think it's a little, it's wider. I think we could probably, they've been doing it for longer. ISBA's been doing it, this is their 5th year. We have a company that's long established, so those are just things to weigh. As far as local talent we have, right, we have probably a few people that may qualify for this position, and we certainly encourage them to apply.
Right.
And maybe they could work an interim thing too, but that, they should be along with the whole process. And they will be a part of it.
I don't want
Yeah.
to consider them without having a search pool going that's broader than just our internals.
So, yeah.
And they would probably be the first ones to say, oh yeah, we want to be a part of it, but we certainly,
Shouldn't limit
we
it.
know we're not going to limit it to just local.
Absolutely.
So I don't think there's really a conflict there. I think they want to be part of it. But I
agree.
share your concern. I certainly hope they would jump in, and they may work out for either one of those positions, or they could be our next superintendent. But we need to cast the net out and see what we got.
So Mr. Chairman, I'm very impressed with the program today, and I'm very impressed with McPherson and Jacobson's experience and opportunities. I'm concerned about the timeline, but I think he addressed that. He said, you know, if we go through the search and we don't find the person that we need in the time that we allow, you know, their services, you know, continue into next year without additional fees. You know, and in reference to Lonnie's concern about in-district candidates, I share, you know, Carrie's comment. You know, I would not want to pick an in-district candidate as an interim if they're going to be a candidate for the permanent.
Sure.
You know, I invite them to participate in the selection process, but you know, if we go interim, I would prefer not to get someone who intends to be a candidate for the permanent.
Right.
I think that there's a lot to be said for starting the search now, even keeping in mind that we may not fully resolve the question until next spring. I want the community to be contacted and engaged now, and start the search process. I think if we did not have our admin and group has known Don and had already a good rapport and respect for his professionalism, and the fact that he comes recommending this McPherson and Jacobson speaks well to me. I looked into that. I think that there are other firms out there. I feel this is a top of the line firm, so I'm very comfortable, even though we're making a hasty choice, it's not an ill-advised choice, is my opinion.
Thank you.
Time is of the essence. We've got to act very quickly, very, very quickly. And knowing that we can extend it if we do need to go at the interim because we can't find the fit. I think it speaks highly of this company that Don would come out of retirement to come and present to us.
Right.
I respect that. The length of his teeth, because they're right there with mine. Yeah,
Okay.
so
Well,
I'm comfortable.
any comments, Lisa? I think we have a consensus of the board here that a professional's contract would be in order.
So can I make a motion? You know,
Don't need to.
can I move
Well,
it?
it's not
No
a,
action.
there's no action needed.
No action needed, it's just action needed. Yes, any other last comments?
Well, Lisa had looked through this contract, drawn our eye to a few things. I think the fact that the interim policy is so clearly laid out. The fee is lower, as I understand, than what the fee was 7+ years ago when they did this search. I didn't have any red flags looking through this contract. You pulled our attention to a couple of pieces, Lisa, especially noting the responsibilities of McPherson and Jacobson and our district responsibilities. I read through those and I feel comfortable going forward with this contract.
So, I wonder if I could ask Mindy to make a comment. You know, she's been through this
Quietly.
process.
We have some
Quietly
expertise.
watching.
It'd be nice to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Gary. Well, I'm very impressed guest. I did have another suggestion, our previous one, but he's the guy that's full up to here, and I didn't know about this company, and it all sounds really good to me, and I agree with Curly, nailed, time is of the
Time is,
essence.
yeah.
Don't waste any time.
I think that was the key
Get on
word of
with
the
this.
meeting here.
Yeah, the
Oh,
takeaway.
last minute.
That's what everybody else said, I just.
Okay, well, all the business has been completed, we'll adjourn.